In today's video, we're going to touch on the Chelsea versus Celtic friendly, a few tactical things that we noticed from that game, and why we maybe shouldn't be looking too much into the results in pre-season. This was the lineup we saw to start the game, with the one on the left showing that starting 4-3-3 shape, and then the one on the right showing that 3-2-4-1, how it moves into possession when Reece James inverts from that right-hand side. We saw that same box midfield created with Reece James, Lavia and Nkunku and Carney. We had Madueke still out on the right, but we had Mudryk come in off the left for some minutes. We also had Fofana come in to that back three instead of tossing from the start. Something that was interesting about this game is one of the pivot players dropping off to create that back four a little bit higher up, where Sanchez wasn't able to form that, with the wide centre-backs operating as more nominal fullbacks and forming that sort of temporary 4-1 shape where they could connect the lines across that back four with shorter distance passing. So in this example, Lavia has dropped in between those two centre-backs, which is creating that sort of link between the two so that the distances aren't too big. Here is another example that we spoke about last game, where you sort of see that 3-3-4 shape in build-up with the wide pocket number 8 receiver coming part of that midfield three, and then you have the front four, and it allows that big space between one of the wide centre-backs and central centre-back, as you can see between Wes and Badiashile. That is the sort of outstanding issue if the ball is turned over in transition. You then have the normal 4-2 base shape that can be formed a little bit deeper, as I said a minute ago, with Sanchez being part of that 4-2 in that base so that the pivot can stay nice and central. And then even there you can see Carney, who's in that sort of wide 8 receiver role, who's slightly more central currently, but as the ball progresses he could drop in a little bit wider to receive the ball, or he could stay central to receive the ball between the lines. And this is another example of that here with both number 8s in picture. Again, this will be something you see a lot throughout the season, forming that 4 at the back with Sanchez stepping up and the pivot nice and narrow so that it can create those passing angles straight into those number 8s, as you can see if Sanchez was to zip that in. And as the season goes on, those players will become more and more comfortable receiving that ball from the back 4. Here's another example of Lavia dropping in between to sort of shorten that distance and be that connector between Badiashile and Colwill to shorten those gaps and make those passes a little bit more nippy and quick. But he's also still in an area where he can quickly join the pivot with Reece. So this is actually a really good connecting zone for Lavia to be in, and it's quite a smart one to pick up. Now, one of the patterns that I wanted to speak about was that wide pocket number 8 receiver joining that axis. So as you can see, I've drawn that axis between the wide centre-back and Mudryk to show where that pocket of space is for Nkunku to pick up the ball. This then allows Mudryk to drift inside to that pocket and receive between all 4 players, where he can then turn and be positive and go towards goal, which he does really well. By Mudryk receiving in that pocket and then turning central towards goal, it then allows that space out wide to be occupied by Nkunku. Again, this is pre-season, so it's not quite as sharp as it needs to be. But as you can see, the space is there for Nkunku to attack, and he does eventually get there with a few combination passes where he then receives the ball out wide, as you can see coming up on screen now, where he can then attack the box, or he can put in a little ball in behind, which he does to Mark Gu, who actually, I think, manages to get a shot off on target in this scenario. But it's these little combination plays with the wide player and the number 8 that can really cause problems for the opposition, and we saw this a lot last season with KDH and Mavididi at Leicester for Enzo Maresca. The off-ball shape, we still saw that sort of 4-1-4-1, but at times we also saw this 4-4-2 with a little bit of a staggered height in the middle of the pitch. Again, Lavia being slightly deeper as he does in that 4-1-4-1 shape. But perhaps the most interesting thing in this game was that man-to-man press, and watching which player from the backline was jumping out to support that man-to-man press, where it was often actually the right centre-back in this scenario. So this picture's from the second half, and it's actually Tosin who's jumped out. And if you could see behind the picture, Reece James is sort of filled in as that right centre-back. And this happened as well in the first half with Wesley Fofana taking that role to jump out of the back 4 and sort of create that pressure in the middle of the pitch, following his man in that man-to-man press, and then again Reece James would sit in at that right centre-back role. Here you can see another example of Fofana going man-to-man, and again you can see he's even higher than Madueke. People were tweeting all about this. This is not something that is unfamiliar for Enzo Maresca. We saw this last season for his Leicester side. One of that back 4 is allowed to jump out and be very aggressive to try and win the ball back, as long as the other 3 have the IQ and ability to know exactly where to be, where to cover, and the spaces that have been left within that back 4, depending on which of the back 4 jumps out. So in this case, the right centre-back has jumped out of the back 4, meaning that that is the role that needs to be filled. So again, the gap between Badiashile and Reece in this scenario wasn't actually ideal, but then as you can see from here, they're quite well spread. And yes, it's man-to-man, but they've all got their man to mark. So Reece will be covering that right centre-back / right-back role. Badiashile in the middle of the pitch, Levi Colwill on the left. To speak about the defensive line errors, I just want you to read these quotes that are on screen here that Maresca came out and said after the game, saying that for sure we need to improve many things off the ball. And as you said, one of the things we did badly today was when the ball was not under pressure, we maintained a high line. But when the ball is not under pressure, you need to drop. For the second goal, one of the key points to point out during this play is the fact that Mudryk is not putting enough pressure on the ball out wide. The wide players, and this is Madueke on the right, and then it was Mudryk on the left, those wide defensive wingers, they do have to do their bit to put pressure on the ball so that the narrow back four can stay narrow and mark them in and around the box. This means that Colwill has to go out and put pressure on the ball. Again, Mudryk's not really doing anything in a defensive capacity. This then leaves that gap. Badiashile was too far away from his man. But again, that is due to Colwill now having to put pressure on the ball and Mudryk not doing his bit. So then this allows them to get in behind. And then yes, Fofana obviously isn't watching his man either. But that's quite a smart little play from Celtic to start in the offside position and make it hard for him to do. And again, with fitness and time, I don't doubt that Fofana's not going to be an issue in that sense. So I'm not too worried about that. Whereas a lot of people have been losing their minds over that Fofana instance. Again, for the fourth goal, Madueke looks to drop the ball inside and it leaves them in this sort of rest defence position where they can break in transition. Gusto actually does really well to put pressure on the ball, which forces that ball long and in behind as it's the only pass really on for Celtic in that manner. However, again, the distances between the centre-backs is too far. It allows that one runner, they're only dealing with that one person in transition for that run, but they're just not close enough and compact enough to make that recovery and to be able to shepherd that ball towards one of the back line or to Sanchez to then allow them to play out. And it ends up in this position where, of course, the fourth goal comes from. So again, it's all to do with the timings of when to press, when not, when to drop off, which man is yours to take in terms of in transition, and making those lines a little bit shorter in between, definitely in those transitional moments. And then I just wanted to talk about the goal that Chelsea scored because it did show nice bravery from the backline, playing through the lines and that ability to make things happen with little connections and combinations within the pivot. This starts with a brave pass from Badiashile in the backline straight into the feet of Gusto, who can then drop it off to Santos really quickly. Gusto, who's been very good at doing this pre-season in terms of getting rid of the ball quickly and using those 1-2 touch combinations, drops it off to Santos and then makes the movement to then receive the ball from Santos in a quick 1-2 wall pass scenario. Santos plays that ball back into Gusto, into that space where Gusto can then take a big touch away and drive through the centre of the pitch. Something I love about Gusto being in central areas is using that athleticism to progressively carry the ball from deep and drive Chelsea forwards. And again, this is where the goal came from. Gusto drives his way forward, making a very good run through the centre of the pitch, who then manages to drop it off to that left side with a multitude of small passes, ends up at Sterling's feet, who can then go on to win that penalty, which Nkunku nicely slotted away. To give a few players some praise, Mark Gu was one of them. And again, it's that tenacity and hustle that he brings to the team. A lot of the time where he'll ride a challenge really well, get up in and around the box, still manage to get a shot off when you might not think he will. He has that ability to create something out of nothing. He runs the channels really well and he works extremely hard. So again, he was very impressive. Again, Malo Gusto, although he only got a shorter amount of minutes in this game due to Reece James playing a longer period of time in that inverted role, I think when he did come on, he showed that brilliance for the goal, and I just like the way he's playing in that inverted role. He's very quick to move the ball on, and he's really buying into those quick combinations, not having too many touches, but then when he does have the chance to drive forward and impact the game in an attacking sense, he's still able to do that. And some people might be surprised about this one, but Noni Madueke, he kept getting himself into good positions. He dropped the ball off to Carney Chukwuemeka inside the box, which actually could have ended up with 2 assists, and on another day, he'd actually be getting a lot more praise, I believe. But yes, his final ball has been lacking slightly throughout this pre-season, but that is something I think is going to come further and further with more match sharpness. He's doing his defensive job well, and I think Maresca will actually be quite happy with that second game performance from Noni Madueke against Celtic, despite the result and despite not actually getting any goal contributions. So let me know what you made of Chelsea versus Celtic. Please like, comment and subscribe. Let me know, like I say, what you thought of that game, any questions you want me to answer. We'll be doing a live stream tomorrow to preview the Club America game, and then the next day, which will be the day after, which will be Thursday, we'll be doing another one of these videos to touch on what we learnt from that game against Club America. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know any questions you have down below. Like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.